Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I have the co-founder of ZenGate, Sam. Welcome, Sam.
Hi, thanks for having me, Anthony.
Thank you for joining. So, ZenGate Global, for those unaware, was founded in 2022. It's a leading blockchain technology company building commercial solutions for governments and businesses around the world. Their ecosystem is composed of three core product families: the Palmyra ComDEX, Solaris Portal, and Cyberiad. Um, their mission as Zengay is to bring financial inclusion for micro, small, and medium-sized businesses through building paradigm-shifting solutions. These solutions will utilize the best features and tools available from the extended UTXO ecosystem, such as Ergo and the Cardano blockchain. So, first off, where does the imagination come from to envision this type of new business model, and where does the inspiration come from to actually go ahead and pursue it head on?
Sure. So the original idea, Dan Friedman, my co-founder, came up with through the years of working at the national level and state level with his work at IOHK and IOG. So when we first sort of came together to talk about these things, it was still an idea and a fragmented idea, but a big vision. And a lot of the emerging markets that he'd traveled to, and also I'd had traveled to as well, we had noticed sort of an underserved opportunity to build some technology. And we landed on the commodities space purely out of luck, I think, on our end and through connections and through sort of discussing things as well. So like we'd always been a big believer of the tokenization of real world assets. We'd also been a big believer of blockchain use cases beyond sort of things within the blockchain ecosystem itself. So it was a natural opportunity to build something outside of those ecosystems. And we fell into commodities by luck and just by virtue of being able to see some of the things that were happening in other markets and being exposed to that.
Now, the commodities market is projected to reach over 5 trillion US dollars by 2026. So really, right around the corner. Your flagship product, Palmyra ComDEX, is actually targeting commodity markets which are underserved in the world with cutting edge technology. You're going to enable them to grow through broader global reach and access to credit, which is very important. And obviously, combining the blockchain technology and the tokenized assets elements of it, the unique value proposition you'll bring to those businesses is essentially tokenizing those commodities and being able to list them for spot and futures trading between different businesses around the world. Um, so affordability is a great big part of it, and obviously embedded traceability, access to capital and credit, as we mentioned before. And in a post-COVID world, obviously, this solution is going to help remedy and build back uh, the trust and resilience of our global supply chains and help with that. Um, with all of that being said, kind of as a brief overview, commodities are often overlooked as kind of an unsexy cousin of the money chasing global financial markets. Why is bringing decentralized blockchain tech and tokenized assets back to real life use cases such as the global commodity market so important for your company to pursue as a vision?
Yeah, so there's a few different criteria that we use, and for those that may not be familiar with what commodities are, just a quick overview of sort of what we define as commodities as the raw materials. And these could be metals or agricultural products that we consume every day. And the reason why it's so important is we consume these things every day, whether that's energy related commodities like oil and gas to move around, or if it's food, like the corn you eat, the wheats, the rice, the vegetables and the fruits, like these all fall under the scope of what commodities are. Our specific focus area for Palmyra is an intersection of emerging markets. So these are developing economies that potentially haven't quite reached the scale or the size or the opportunity that like other markets like where I'm from, like in Australia and Japan or in the US, have been successful at sort of reaching. So that's one intersection, and the other intersection is technology and the ability to have adopted technology. So we got this cross section of underserved technology and underserved markets. And often in these markets, commodities play an enormous role. So Sri Lanka, for example, the tea industry, which is $1.5 billion in export value, is the biggest export market that they have for commodities. So they often play a really big role. They hire lots of people. The reach is quite enormous and significant for these countries. So tackling them head on is no easy feat, but the impact that you have on the broader market, but also the people that are working in the market are enormous. And we're talking even in Sri Lanka alone, in the millions, sort of at least like I think 8 to 10% of the population work in the sector. So these are big impacts that we can have for these countries.
Yeah, when I first heard about ZenGate, I kind of admired your bottom-up approach versus top-down. You're going for sort of the underdog, right? Sri Lanka, for better or worse, most people, if they even know about the country in the Western world, is usually tied to a history of civil war and kind of the negative connotations, and nobody really knows this kind of island off the coast of India, what it even does most of the time. And then you're shining a spotlight on it and saying, okay, this is where we're actually going to implement this cutting edge technology and implement our pilot program. Um, yeah, it's very interesting. I hope there's more kind of ground up approaches to the developing markets versus kind of repeatedly trying to pitch to, let's say, venture capitalists in Silicon Valley about the next hot thing. And we're kind of pounding the same pavements over and over again. So NFTs are a big portion of traceability. And I know Dan, he foreshadowed ZenGate and a lot of these things when I last interviewed him before the announcement of ZenGate. So NFTs are best known for their kind of generative artwork collections and kind of unfortunately kind of money grab approach in many cases on OpenSea, for example. But in reality, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, have a vast array of utility for problems they can actually solve. What is the significance of NFTs when it comes to actually tokenizing these assets and making sure businesses can see where everything is hitting across the world and trading?
Yeah, so I think art was a good use case to get things going and to get attention globally around the ability to use NFTs. So I agree. It was a good place to start, but I think it's often overlooked in terms of what NFT and sort of NFT technology can be implemented for. So for us, it's quite simple. There's not too much that's complicated about it, but we effectively want to tokenize an asset and have that sit on a ledger that people can see. So, and within that, we want to be able to connect it and sort of embed it to data that we care about. So whether that's traceability across the supply chain. So as someone that may be ESG conscious in America that wants to consume tea that's been sustainably sourced, it's compliant with labor standards, you have the ability to actually connect the assets that you're buying on chain to that history. So that's really what we're doing. And the good thing about having it all on the ledger is you can get the asset sort of transfer process much easier as well and much more transparent. So the main thing is we want to be able to tokenize an asset. In our case, with sort of the pilots and so the customers that we're working with, it might be some representation of a unit of gold, or it might be a representation of a unit of tea as well. And The reason why we're not using fungible tokens for everything is, well, firstly, we're going to be working across different commodity markets, but different countries in general. But even within that, you have different intersections and dimensions of types and qualities and grades as well. So it gets a bit difficult to use fungible tokens to represent a single asset class, as opposed to an NFT. So tea has many grades. It's grown in a lot of different countries and it's bought and sold in even more countries as well. So NFTs are like the best sort of tool in the decentralized world to be able to represent the assets that we care about.
Right. Um, Good answer. Um, so when we look at kind of documentaries highlighting the local farmers and the small plots of land and the people toiling on it and working very hard to produce commodities such as coffee or cacao, um, we oftentimes see that they get the shortest end of the stick. And when it comes to compensation, even though they are the genesis of all trade after the land produces the raw goods. I'm curious to understand if down the line, the technology services that you're providing would essentially help to cut out the middleman or at least reduce their relevancy a little bit more to make it more of an even level playing field and make apart from making trade more efficient and rewarding for those producers of commodities.
Yeah. Just to touch quickly on Sri Lanka as well, something you mentioned before, like these, like I don't personally feel like we're putting a spotlight on the country. Like it often gets overlooked, and the country itself is extremely like many parts of it extremely digitized already. It has a very educated population as well, and yeah, there have been a couple problems in the past, but they're very much early adopters of technology, and at least from the conversations we've been having at the sort of regulatory level with sort of with ministers and whatnot, have been very positive, and they're very ready and sort of very willing to adopt new technology, which is a extremely different sort of feeling that I've had working in other markets as well. Like I've worked in across Japan and sort of Australia, so like extremely different. To touch on your question around intermediaries, the first priority for us is to make the supply chain more resilient and more efficient, and we think technology can do that. The good thing is a lot of the different types of stakeholders towards the end of the supply chain have done quite well with managing their cash reserves, and they've been quite proactive implementing technology. So whether that be like the brokers or the traders of tea, for example, they've been quite successful over the last couple of decades, last couple of years, and have been able to reinvest money to make their systems more efficient. But what we've noticed is that there is a gap, sort of, further down to the producer level that may not have had the opportunity to actually adopt that type of technology. So this is where we fit in. We want to make it more efficient for them. And through the efficiencies, you should capture value to begin with. And then sort of the second thing that we do care about is opening up access into new markets. And there is an existing system that works quite well. There's an existing system that's reliable and trustworthy. And we believe that system, like you asked, are you going to replace middlemen? I don't think it's going to go away because there's trust built into the system. But what we can do is, by opening up access into new markets, is provide an additional revenue stream for people that are looking to sell directly, potentially somewhere else, as opposed to the sort of the norm that they're used to. So we believe there's a few sort of value propositions. The first is efficiency and capturing the value through that. And then the second bit is opening up into new markets. So you provide producers and sort of factories an alternative way, or anyone really, an alternative way to sell and to sell their products overseas.
Um, Speaking of Sri Lanka, recently, as we filmed this interview, you've been having high level talks over there with literally boots on the ground and you physically being in the country. Um,
Mhm.
what has your experience been so far visiting in Sri Lanka, and what parties have you met with, and how has the reception been for you, Daniel, and pretty much the entire ZenGate team?
Sure. So it's been a really interesting week. Like even within the time we've been here, I think the IMF approved a big sort of loan to the government. So there's been a big step towards more stability in that sense, which is great for the country. I think. So I think there's a bit of I guess ease happening there, which I think is important. And then as the being on the ground, like I'm someone that really appreciates the nature of the country. And as soon as I landed, the beaches were there, the sunsets were there, and I sort of really felt relaxed and ready to get some work done. So it's a beautiful country, and um, yeah, I felt ready to go like as soon as I landed. But as for the people we've been meeting, some of our customer base will be factory owners. So we had the opportunity to run some workshops and basically meet some of the biggest and so the experts that run that part of the market as well. And we learned a lot of stuff through these workshops and got a lot of good questions and suggestions as well in terms of how we can iterate our product as we've been sort of testing and sort of showcasing with them. So that was incredible. We did one in a region called Kandy, which is in the central province of Sri Lanka, and then there was another one further south in Sri Lanka in an area called Goal. So that was really good. And then we also had the opportunity to meet some ministers as well in Colombo. So we drove up to Colombo on one of the days, and we had a few different meetings, and that was also incredible to see, at least from the regulatory side and the policy side, the interest to adopt new types of technologies and the interest to try and support different types of business models as well. So we just have to push things along. Like Dan and I are sort of foreigners in this country. We also have Sri Lankans in our team, which makes things, much easier to do business in the country. But we need to basically show them that we're here, we're properly here, and we're ready to deliver, and not just come in and get out and sort of grab money on the way out. So we're putting our reputation on the line here, and we have to deliver. So being able to actually meet the people and sort of look at them in the eyes and tell them we're here, we're not dicking around, was felt really good and felt quite empowering as well for me.
Um, when you think about, the research and development cycle that it will take to really fully flesh out Palmyra ComDEX and the other flagship products that you are also working on as well. In tandem, there sort of has to be a gradual adoption from your customer base
Mhm.
to utilize and understand where this technology comes from, the significance, and kind of a lot of high level concepts when it comes to blockchain technology. Do you ever think
Mhm.
about how long it will take for businesses, both small and large, and micro as well, to adopt this new technology into their everyday lives and trading practices overall?
Sure. So I think I'll touch on this across a few different dimensions. I think the first is you mentioned adoption of like blockchain and adoption of that technology. So I think the way around that some parts of the industry are good at is you need to make the user experience so seamless that you don't even realize that you're running anything on the blockchain. So we have this philosophy at ZenGate, and we've had the opportunity to work with Nicholas, who's part of the Ergo ecosystem as well. He helped design, I think, Paideia and a few other projects as well. And working with him was phenomenal. Like he sort of really buys into that philosophy that you need to make things so simple that you don't even realize that you're connecting a wallet or you're transacting on the blockchain. You're just transacting, full stop. You don't need to know what's happening behind. But but what you can know is that it's secure and it's reliable and it's trusted, and it's custodied by yourself, for example. So that's one thing. And we think we can do that. Like Nicholas and the team, like we built a really good UX, and we've got nothing but positive feedback from the community and from our customers around that. And we made it simple, full stop. As for adoption, like there's an element of what we're building, which is a marketplace, and around that you have a lot of different value add services, and we like to call it an aggregated platform. And the reason why it's an aggregated platform is we're not catering for a single customer base, but it is a market that we're catering for, and they have lots of different customer segments and things that they care about. So the it is a layered approach in terms of how we actually implement these things. And one of the reasons why we actually came to Sri Lanka was to try figure out what the number one starting point is and to figure out what the sequence looks like, because there's 50,000 things that they're asking for, but there's only one that, well, we need to begin and start testing out. So we feel quite strongly that we know what that starting point looks like, and then once we get building on that and get some traction, we just continue to build the components around it, and we feel confident we can do that. And then the other bit is because one of the core value propositions is the marketplace. Marketplace business models rely heavily on the ability to get traction on both the sell supply side and the buy demand side as well. So managing that balance over time is obviously going to be a challenge, I think, but there's a lot of great marketplace models that we can learn from and sort of see how they developed as well. So we'll feel okay about that. It seems like there's a train running in the background. I'm not sure if you can hear that. It's quite loud on my end.
No, no, I didn't really pick up on it. uh, so yes, Daniel also mentioned this in our interview way back when about kind of forgetting the intricacies of how things work and just feeling comfortable that they do work, and forgetting that you're using all of these underlying technologies, because the utility kind of absorbs you and engulfs you into it, and it feels like a breeze. I want to get into a little more of why Ergo and why Cardano. I know I'll ask Daniel about these questions as well. But do you have any information on that you can share? Why a proof of work chain? Why a proof of stake chain? And why at the same time?
Yeah, so I think one of the main, well, I think we all know why Dan would want to build something on Cardano and Ergo given his involvement. But for me personally, I came into the space with the intent of building like a parametric insurance project. I'd done some stuff in the insurtech space beforehand, and I wanted to do some stuff, and sort of fell across Cardano, and then naturally I fell into like the Ergo ecosystem, and like like building things on Scala is extremely secure, and it's also straightforward as well. And I think the main reason why we've picked Ergo is the community. Like I think there are a lot of great sort of standards that we have across the community around open sourcing things, making things transparent, building code, and sort of building projects that are useful for people, useful for the world. I really buy into that. And there are a lot of different ecosystems, a lot of really good ecosystems as well, great founders and great projects. But there's something about the Ergo ecosystem that we fell in love with, and we feel bound with as well. So we believe that we've been getting tremendous support from the community alone, like that. Like it really inspires us, and watching all the other projects succeed in Ergo as well has been really inspirational. So that's sort of why it's not really like a like the tech is obviously like phenomenal. Like I don't need to talk about the tech because everyone else talks about the tech and probably talks about the tech too much. But I won't touch on that. But I think the community is unique, and I think that plays a really big role in the types of stuff we're trying to do. So that's my answer. It's a bit all over the place, but I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I definitely can understand where you're coming from, being kind of involved in the Ergo ecosystem and uh kind of feeling the transparency is always there, and um people support you whether they can profit off of you or not, unlike maybe some other chains where everybody's talking about the price of the coin, and it becomes a drag in many cases. um
Mhm.
so I wanted to briefly touch on, so if a customer is using your products and beneath it all is running on both of these blockchains, I'm interested in knowing how the settlement currency will be, and how will they be compensated for their trades? Is that part of the financial system fleshed out yet? Anything you could share on that?
Yeah, I think there's two sort of approaches to that. So the first approach is firstly plugging in fiat payments. Like we need to recognize that people may not be ready to accept digital currencies as a form of payment, and you can do a lot of the tokenization and the traceability stuff on the blockchain itself, credentials, identity, like 95% of it can be run like those modules can be run across Ergo and Cardano, and if there are other blockchains we want to use, I'm not sure yet. But as for payments, um, a farmer may not want to be paid in ERG just yet. Maybe in the future, but we need to actually just make it accommodating, so that we get a bit more traction and adoption to begin with. So that's the first thing. We're speaking to a large fintech that basically is a leader in the payment space globally, so they can transact cheaply, or um, cheaper than maybe the other traditional payment rails, and that'll plug in so that people can accept rupees or accept US dollars, or any other foreign currency of choice. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is that there is actually some interest in terms of accepting digital currencies. So there's two things that you can sort of address of that. The first is working with regulators to basically try get policy moving in the right direction so that you can accept digital currencies. Like there are lots of different countries around the world where you can take payment in Bitcoin or in USDC, for example, and sort of cash that out. But Sri Lanka is in the process of trying to, at least has not, it has a specific stance on how it feels about accepting digital currencies as a form of payment. But there are people in the country that are quite sort of optimistic about being able to do that. So right now we can't, but we were getting some interest from the people we actually spoke to on the ground, who are asking, can we take payment in Bitcoin, or can you take payment in like a stable coin, which actually came as a surprise to us as we're running some of these workshops. So um, there obviously seems to be some form of appetite, and at the end of the day, if there's a buyer who wants to buy, let's say, 5,000 kilograms of tea, like premium tea, and wants to pay using ERG, or wants to pay using SIG-USD, for example, there's no reason why we wouldn't accommodate that. So I think there's a maturity in sort of all sorts of non-blockchain ecosystems and non-blockchain industries in terms of adopting this stuff. And I would say it felt like we're on the right path, and I think in the macro we're on the right path. I feel very strongly about it, but given the recent events, I think it might take a little bit of time to sort of ease into it. But I think there will be appetite for it. At the end of the day, when you're transacting, even if it's in stable coins like SIG-USD, on the blockchain, it's cheaper. It's custodied by yourself. I think it's just a much more efficient and transparent sort of way to do settlement. So we want to incorporate some of these things in the future. And as for the customers that may be more blockchain natives, yeah, we will accommodate these things. But right now we're dealing with non-blockchain businesses, and their key criteria in and why they would want to use Palmyra is, can I make more money? Does this make my system more efficient? Um, and uh, and sort of and those probably are the two things that they really care about. They don't really care, at least from what I've noticed, about accepting a digital currency at this point.
Right. Final few questions here. I was wondering, number one, what other commodities is Sri Lanka well known for? And
Mhm.
apart from tea, which is obviously, as we talked about, a major export. And apart from that, what do you see in terms of technological advancement with the accessibility of, for example, mobile phones and internet connectivity that maybe the rest of the world is unaware about when it comes to, having a self-custody wallet and other things that could really help the adoption um, exponentially grow over time?
So Sri Lanka is really known. It used to be known for coffee. I was writing about this in a blog the other day that Chef published, but it used to be a big coffee growing region, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. And the coffee plantations got wiped out by this disease. I think in like the 1860s or something in that sort of timeline, and it got rid of it sort of demolished the entire sort of coffee crop. So that's when they converted into tea plantations. But beyond that, beyond that, they used to be big growers of cinnamon, rubber, and sort of coconut commodities as well. So those are things that we're sort of eyeing and sort of looking into. At least cinnamon and coconuts. There's been a lot of appetite from the people we spoke to do something for that market. It's a much smaller market compared to tea, but once we're on the ground and we're in the region and we understand the policy and the systems, I think it's a matter of scale at this point. So it'll be easier to adopt these markets. And then beyond Sri Lanka, there's, like I talked about at the very beginning, there's this nice intersection of emerging markets that are underserved by technology, and there's lots of them, and it's a potentially upwards of $1 trillion in value that we could tap into, which is super exciting. So, um, and many of these regions are like quite digitized, and they have access to like mobile phones. It's really not they're not living in this like funky world where internet doesn't exist and telephones don't exist and sort of mobile phones don't exist. So it's our job to build a UI that is super simple to use, even if you have a mobile phone, sort of building in offline capabilities as well. So that's what we're focused on, and we'll find out, I guess, when we sort of move out of Sri Lanka at some point and sort of or not move out, move to a new market, and try to do something similar to what we're doing in Sri Lanka. So, well, yeah, we'll find out. Is my answer.
What what other markets are you currently eyeing to break into and participate in a similar type of pilot program, such as the one you have with Sri Lanka in the tea industry?
So we're doing some stuff right now in gold. So gold in Thailand. Gold obviously is a huge market globally, but Thai gold is a sort of a niche part of the gold market. So capturing that and retaining the brand there is quite interesting. And then the other bit that I sort of forgot to mention about Sri Lanka is they have a big gems industry, and Thailand is a big has a big gems and jewelry industry as well. So we see a lot of synergy across those two markets, and the people that we're working with, these two professors in Thailand, at a leading university in Bangkok, like they're experts in that trade. So we've had the opportunity to meet a lot of people in like the precious metals and the precious stones trade in Thailand, and I think there's a lot of connection that we can make between those two regions. So that's one thing. There's a lot of different markets that seem to have these same systematic issues and so structural issues, and whether that's the hazelnuts industry in Turkey or the cashmere industry in Mongolia, which you might have come across with the work that IOG had been doing in the region. There's a lot of inefficiency and sort of operational sort of efficiency that you can capture in these markets. They seem to have a lot of similar problems, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Well, it's fascinating. It really is. I think this is one of the best uses I've seen across the industry for real world adoption of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. And I don't say that lightly. I've seen hundreds of cryptocurrencies by market capitalization over the last few years, and most of them kind of spin their wheels with venture capitalist money and promise things, and then it all falls apart, or it just doesn't really go anywhere. It's a lot of cookie cutter, not so bold approaches like the one you and Daniel have taken, the rest of the ZenGate team. I think as a closing thought, based on what we've talked about today, and I'll talk to Daniel more about the other two flagship products. It's very important that as we, especially here in the US, we continuously print money and kind of try to create value out of thin air, that we try to tie in and unlock value in the emerging markets in a fair and transparent way. Because there's real value in commodities. I mean, this is a historically well-known fact, often overlooked, and it's worth investing time, energy, and effort into getting those markets global access in a better way than what's currently available. So I really want to commend you. I'm sure I'm not the only one. The whole Ergo community is very proud of what you guys are doing, and I appreciate your time. I know you've been on a hectic schedule, and it's currently the morning for you, and it's very late in the evening for me. So I really appreciate your time, Sam, and thank you for all you're doing with ZenGate. Best of luck.
Thank you very much, Anthony, and thanks for sort of running this interview. And it's been great meeting you. And like I say this over and over again, like your support and like the community's support is profound, and it keeps us going as well. So I want to say thank you to everyone listening as well, and thank you to the community for being supportive and giving us tips and sort of advice and suggestions as well along the way. So it's been phenomenal, and we just have to keep delivering at this point and just chug along one step after the other. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you all for watching as well. All right, see you in the next one.